Brown the elevator.
There he is. Welcome.
How are you, sir?
Kind of all look at this.
All right. The mic's on yet? I don't think they're on yet. Ready? Everybody hear me? Hear me? It doesn't feel like it's on. I could sing into it, but I'm not going to. All right. Well, welcome everybody to the mid-monthly meeting for Thursday, October 21st. Sorry for that few-minute delay. We had some, we'll blame it on IT. It was technical difficulties. But thanks for coming out. It's good to see smiling faces. And without further ado, Kim, if you please call the roll.
Mr. Owens?
Here.
Mr. Anderson?
Ready.
Ms. Gilligan?
Here.
Ms. Fletch?
Here.
And Mayor West?
Here. And now we'd like to do the Pledge of Allegiance, and Mr. Anderson, if you don't mind, lead us.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. At this time, we'll take up the approval of the agenda. I don't know of any changes, council. Does anybody have any changes we'd like to make, any alterations? Okay, if there are none, I would open the floor for a motion to approve the agenda as it is.
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Ms. Pillion to approve the agenda as it is. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Anderson. Any discussion, council? Hearing none, Kim, if you'll please call the roll.
Mr. Owens?
Aye.
Mr. Anderson?
Aye.
Ms. Gilligan?
Aye.
Ms. Fletch?
Aye.
And Mayor West?
Aye. So that brings us to public comments, and I don't think we have anything today. Is that correct? Thank you, Ms. Kingsley. There are no public hearings, no proclamations. It's kind of a boring meeting, to be honest with you. But we do have some new business, and I'm going to read this. It's a little bit lengthy, but we have a request by Clifton Stewart Rentals LLC for proposed zoning map amendment to rezone tax map ID 104A31, parcel consisting of 0.65 acres more or less located at 430 Porterfield Highway, Abingdon, Virginia, from M1, which is Limited Industrial District, to B2, which is a General Business District. Tax map ID 104A32, parcel consisting of 4.24 acres more or less located at 555 Porterfield Highway, Abingdon, Virginia, from M1, again Limited Industrial District, to B2, General Business District. And tax map, finally, ID 104A33, parcel consisting of 1.19 acres more or less located at 520 Porterfield Highway, Abingdon, Virginia, from M1, which is Limited Industrial District, to B2, General Business District. And I think, Ms. Rice, Mayanna, did I say that correctly? See, I'm pretty good. But I believe those are beside one another. Is that how I take it? If you could give us a little rundown of what we're looking at there.
Sure. Good afternoon. My name is Rice, the Abingdon Community Development Director. So the case that you have before you, as you mentioned, has 3 parcels, and they are adjacent to each other. Do I need to turn this on?
No, I'll turn it on.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
Do I need to start over?
No, you're good. We
Okay.
can hear you. We just wanna make sure the
Okay,
public can hear
sounds
you.
good.
Sure.
So yes, it consists of 3 tax ID numbers in there, as you mentioned, but for the record, 104A-3-1, 104A-3-2, and then 104A-3-3. And I just want to clarify that it's on Porterfield Highway, but also if you look at the map that is in your packet, the 555 is actually on Russell Road. So I just want to clarify because on Porterfield Highway, there is actually another 555. So as long as we stick with the tax ID parcels, we're good. Yes, so it's being converted or being requested to convert from M1 Limited Industrial District to B2 General Business District. Per the Virginia Code, Section 15.2-2204, the Planning Commission conducted a public hearing on Monday, September 27th, 2021. There were no public comments at that meeting. Based on a motion by Mr. Sproles and seconded by Mr. Pennington, the Planning Commission unanimously voted to recommend approval of the zone map amendment to change it from the M1 to the B2. In the approval of that, there are several items that the Virginia Code requires findings to be made on in section 15.2-2284, and I'll just read them again for the record. Character of the property is something that you need to look at for findings. Whether or not it is part of the comprehensive plan, and the comprehensive plan currently has this mapped as general business. So actually converting it to the B2 will be more in compliance with the comprehensive plan than it currently is. The trends or changes in the area, and as we all know, that area is compatible with B2. Any other studies, transportation requirements of the community, public service requirements, natural resources, and then the appropriate use of the land. So in the public hearing and the information that was presented by staff as well as the applicant, those items were addressed. So staff continues to support this request, as well as, again, it was a unanimous vote from the Planning Commission. So if you have any questions for me, I can try to answer them. Otherwise,
I got one quick question.
yeah.
Our map shows four different parcels. Is it 3 or 4 that's being rezoned?
It's 3.
It's the 3 on Porterfield Highway and not on Russell Road, correct?
Correct. So you've got, let me just read them again into the record for you so that we're very clear. It is 104A-3-1. So that's the southernmost parcel. And then we have 104A-3-2, which is the central portion that had the large warehouse on it. And then also we have 104A-3-3. So I think that there was a little bit of confusion perhaps in the original description of the 555, but it's actually these 3 parcels along the Porterfield Highway.
So, Mayana, what is 104-2-15 then?
Yeah, that is not part of what was advertised, and it is not part of what was on the application or the request. So I'm thinking that perhaps this map that got put into the packet was part of somebody looking or analyzing whether or not they were also interested in that one. But neither the application nor what the Planning Commission looked at nor what was advertised today has that 4th parcel in it, so.
And is that Mr. Stewart's property too?
That I cannot tell you. I'm not sure.
Now, just in general, and I don't want you to get into great detail, but what exactly does moving from limited industrial to general business do for this property?
Sure, it's a different set of allowed permitted uses. So in the M1, you have a much more focus on manufacturing, warehousing, those types of things, which are the permitted uses. In the B2, it lends itself more towards other commercial ventures. So it has a much wider range of uses. I would not say that they're that dramatically different, except that, yes, the industrial is more focused on the concepts of warehousing and industrial and manufacturing.
So perhaps this would be more of a retail outlet than
It
an
could be.
industrial type.
It
Okay.
could be. I've had some, I think there is some desire for that parcel to ultimately be like a travel center. That's what we've had the most conversations about regarding that, and that would fit in the B2. I don't know if, of course, I always say that when you're looking at a rezone, you're looking at the highest, most intense use of the property, because a person could rezone it and then sell it the very next day, so.
Yeah, there were some concept plans that were presented to the planning commission, but like I said, those are just
Right.
concepts, and you have to just look at the underlying zoning district, not necessarily what, that will happen during the development review process, that'll go to
Correct.
staff if it gets rezoned, and we'll determine if it meets the code and all those things.
Correct.
So, if I heard you correctly, the parcel on Russell Road, the 104-215, is not Jimmy's property?
I cannot tell you if it is Jimmy's property or not. I'd have to pull that up, but I definitely can tell you that it was not part of the application. So this map that does appear in your packet, and again, I apologize just not being here. I'm not exactly sure
You don't have to
where
apologize
that
for not
came
being
from. Well, for not knowing that this question would come up. You know, it lends itself to make you think that that's part of the request, but nothing in the application indicates that parcel.
Right, but that's something they
So,
submitted, right? That's not
correct.
something we do.
You are correct, yep.
Okay.
So,
I just wanted to make sure that Jimmy didn't intend that to be if he owned it, but obviously he probably doesn't own it.
Right.
and if he
Looks
does.
like William McCall owns it.
You got it, okay, perfect. I was gonna say, if he does, and he does want to come back through this process, I mean, we'd be more than happy to send him back through and have another set of public hearings, so.
So do you think, and this is just me, like, for my edification, but that property has had a lot of different functions over the many years it's been there. Anything from car lots to warehouses to flea markets to whatever. Do you think if we do something like a retail development there, or if that's done, is that gonna be a traffic issue, do you think? Or
So
do you-
we actually had a meeting this last week with the Department of Transportation, and we talked about this intersection. They do have it on a list of projects that they're looking at ultimately working on us and fixing it. So I think there's kind of like 3 points in the community right now. Cook, the connection for Cook, Cummings, and then this intersection were the three that come up on their like tier 1
Okay.
level of interest. So there was further discussion. I've also had, and the reason I wanted to be clear on the 555 Porterfield was that I've had a request from a realtor to also discuss 555 Porterfield, which is currently zoned residential, whether or not there'd be interest in converting that to commercial as well. So if that becomes much more of a commercial node right there in all the parcels, that intersection's already a concern. And so they would be looking at additionally reviewing that and making changes, so that is on the list.
Later on down the road, the 555 is gonna be used as an entrance.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay, okay.
another entrance.
Okay, makes sense, makes sense.
Yeah, because one of the concerns that I would have is, and staff would have, is that if you get to any entrances in the facility that close to that intersection on Porterfield Highway,
Yeah.
it could
Traffic
create some
back up,
issues.
yeah.
And I don't know, this is probably a question for Tyler, and he's not here, but I didn't know if there's access control rights from VDOT is there, because it's on 19, so they would, within a certain amount of feet, they would still have
Yeah.
some input and they would be involved, so anything they
They
probably did would have to be permitted or approved by VDOT anyways.
Correct.
Alright.
And Tyler indicated that when he had met with the applicant on this parcel, that they had already looked at some site plans that would basically limit the access. And yes, the moment you basically touch this area, you're gonna have to bring it up to the current access standards, so.
555 was later, we're gonna discuss
Okay,
that
yeah,
later,
okay.
in case they have to use it
Sure.
for footage.
Well, and any particular project, of course, would have to go through all the regular
Sure.
building permit, CO process anyway, so.
And I'm not speculating it'll be a traffic issue. In fact, I've traversed that many, many times, and I've never had issues.
No, I've thought about the same
Yeah.
thing. I mean, you're
But-
not
but I
wrong. I
always
mean,
like to
that's
ask that
Right.
question just to
Yeah.
see if there's any insight, you know.
It at least already is stoplighted.
It is, and you know, I mean, honestly, sometimes back a decade or so ago when it was a flea market, I mean, there was a lot of traffic coming in and out of there, so I mean, I think it can handle the traffic. I
During
just-
peak hours,
yeah,
it would
I'm
be
just curious.
like morning rush hour and
Sure.
would be.
Yeah, and
But thank you, Scappo, for that. That makes sense, though.
And I was just gonna say, based on the data that they look at as to whether or not the DOT gets involved, it is based primarily on crashes. So they said they have a lot of rear end types of crashes that occur at that. That's
Okay.
why it's risen to that higher. So they talked about a green T, I guess is what they call it, where the traffic would actually, that's flowing south, would just continue on and wouldn't have that type of a light, and then maybe possibly extending the northbound approach into the road from Russell. So it's on the list, but there's a couple other projects that are probably.
We could use some more intersection and interchange realignments. We already have.
Well, just in case Wayne Craig's watching, it's not gonna be a roundabout.
It's not gonna be a
So-
roundabout.
That gave him a heart attack, wouldn't it?
No roundabouts were discussed.
All right. Well, thank you so
All
much.
right, absolutely.
Yeah. All right. That brings us to resolutions. We have none. We don't have any first readings of ordinances or unfinished business that I'm aware of. Jim? But we do have some miscellaneous business and communication from the town manager. We have a discussion regarding the memorandum of understanding between Enhance Abingdon Foundation Incorporated and Town of Abingdon. Jimmy?
Yes, so what we have is a proposed draft of an agreement, as we discussed, I think a couple meetings ago, might have been last work session, that Steve and Jennifer and I had been working on the development, which we've since got some private citizens involved on the board, to use a 501c3 as a vehicle to help fundraise for various initiatives in the town, such as first being the sports complex. And we've got a lot of interest in the community for folks who want to donate, individuals, businesses, things that wouldn't otherwise be a sponsorship, which is something else that we've been working on. So what we have here is a draft memorandum of understanding between the town and the 501c3 entity, and the reason is that we want to basically establish a sort of a formal relationship, and that the foundation is fundraising on behalf of the town, and that's their mission, acknowledging that, but also outlining this or formalizing this relationship so there could be agreements between the two entities. For instance, we are going to have one of the primary fundraisers that the organization is going to participate in is the Giving Tree. I think that's what it's called. I keep going back. I think, is it called the Giving Tree? I can't remember what we call it. Okay, and what it is we're gonna have those placed on behind the concession stand building, and so if individuals wanted to donate, $100 or whatever, there'll be various levels they can do that. Well, the foundation is going to take that initiative and do the fundraising for that, and then we just need to have an agreement with, the foundation will have an agreement with the town, allowing them to place the Giving Tree on the back of it, and then acknowledge that formal relationship between the two parties. So, so this is a draft. Steve did the bulk of this work. He's got a lot of good experience in nonprofits and has done a lot of research on this issue. I've reviewed it. We made some changes. We're presenting it to council. This did not go to the attorney yet because we were trying to get this thing ready to go to council first, but it's a draft. So what we're going to do is take any comments that you might have, or any questions that you might have, or feedback, and just bring that to Cam, and then I'll ask him to review it, and then we can bring it back to the next work session and discuss it before we take any formal action on it. So if anybody has any questions about this, now's the time. Steve and I are available to answer any questions about it. So
Mike's got a question.
Mike's got a question. Donna looked
I've
like she
always
had a
got a
question.
question.
Donna looked like she had a question. Mike had a question.
How is the board of trustees set up, or has that been discussed?
No, so the organization has a set of bylaws. You might need to come up here, Steve, because in case I forget, I believe we adopted bylaws. So Brock Hawkins was elected as the president at the last. Brock also serves as the director of the chair of the town's Recreation Advisory Commission. We are trying to get individual citizens involved. We want to have as much independence from the town as we can, but we still need to have a relationship. And so we do have in the bylaws that one employee of the town will be a member of the board of trustees in a director level position or higher. Remind me what we have in the bylaws for the
Yeah, the
membership.
bylaws call for a minimum of 3 to a maximum of 7 Board of Trustee members. We started with 3 because just to formalize the organization. We now have 4 that are members of the Board of Trustees. As the town manager said, a minimum of 1 has to be a director level or above from the town. There's a requirement that they be a town resident, with the exception of 2 seats can be filled by a county resident, because we wanted to have the opportunity for county residents to participate as well. So as we sit here today, we have 4 members. We can go up to 7 because we do want to maintain an arm's length relationship with the town. And because of some of the contractual agreements that we may get into at some point, I think the town manager.
I'm gonna come off when we have a replace. We're trying to recruit some folks to come on the board, since I would be involved in some of those
contractual arrangements, would be a conflict of interest, I think, for me to be on there, so I'm gonna come off. But we had to get the organization started, and since there are none, before we would approve this or sign any formal agreements, I would be replaced, or I would just resign from the
Right.
board, so.
So you said there are four members now?
Mhm.
Who are they?
Myself, Jimmy, Jennifer, and Brock Hawkins.
Yeah.
Those are the four. And we've reached out to a member of the business community here in town who's expressed an initial interest, but we haven't formalized that yet.
You know, some of our boards require specific people to be on there, like the Historic Preservation Review Board requires an architect to be on the board. Are we gonna require a CPA or an attorney or both?
We're not requiring a CPA. We do require someone as treasurer that has experience in that, in that capacity. As we got started, I'm currently the treasurer of the foundation, but that's subject to change
Now, remember,
as
this
well.
is a separate 501c3, so me as as an individual is a member, Steve as an individual is a member, and Jennifer in her capacity as director of recreation, because more than likely, that position would probably stay on. So the town really is not gonna be able to dictate who's going to be on that organization or what, things like that, and that's why there's a separation between the town. But the town is gonna recognize that this organization, now, if this organization stops fulfilling its mission that it agreed to, then at that point, the town could say, well, we're gonna terminate this agreement, and you're not gonna be our fundraising arm anymore.
Right.
So we do have to be careful, like, we're not, the town council or the town is not gonna dictate to this 501c3 who their membership should be and things like that. We're just trying to so you, in the sake of transparency, let you know
Right.
how it's being set up right now and what the inner workings of the organization is.
And the requirement to have a town employee at the director level or above is really for coordination purposes, as
And that's the
opposed to-
foundation's
that-
requirement, not the town's requirement.
Exactly, that's the foundation's requirement,
Right,
and that's
like
for
the foundation
coordination.
bylaws, they specifically require a town employee, I get that.
Yes,
So
uh-huh.
are there other requirements that we should consider at least, like I said, an accountant, a lawyer, anything else,
What Jimmy's saying is the only thing that council would be concerned with is this agreement. We can't say what the foundation
Oh, I'm not,
bylaws or any of that
I'm not
sort of thing.
suggesting that we do.
Mhm.
I'm just asking if that's.
I think he was just brainstorming.
And you're saying should we write that into the bylaws to where that is
Right,
solicited?
like I said, in the bylaws, there is a requirement, like, for instance, the treasurer does have to have experience on that. Doesn't require a CPA, but it does require a
Well,
county background.
we should circulate a copy of the bylaws.
Mhm.
I probably
Be happy
should
to,
have, probably have
yeah.
that in the packet, so I'll
Be
do
happy
that.
to.
So,
And so for clarity's sake,
yeah.
and I heard what you're saying, Jimmy, so the council's not really gonna be soliciting people to be on this board? correct?
no,
That is something
no.
that's gonna be
I mean,
done
if they
by-
have somebody who is interested and they know of somebody, there's nothing wrong with you.
Right.
putting them
That's
in
not
contact
really
with us.
Our purpose.
Yes,
So-
yeah, because we do want to maintain independence, like we were saying, because there is a separation, and we do want people to know that, because there are other initiatives in the community that this organization is going to help, not just with the sports complex.
Sure.
So we want to make sure that we get some well-rounded people,
Right.
on there as well, but,
But for the record, the mission of the foundation, as we were incorporated, as we applied to the IRS for our 501c3 determination, our sole purpose is fundraising on behalf of the town of Abington. No one else, no other charities, no other groups, not the county. It's strictly the town of Abington, and that's why we wanted to have someone on there from the town so that we could coordinate what are the priorities of the town with respect to historical properties, recreation, education, those type things. In the event, unlikely, hopefully, that the foundation were to ever dissolve, whatever assets were a part of that foundation, by our articles of incorporation, would flow to the town, so.
and we put in protection in there, like, supermajority votes to change the bylaws and things of that nature, and so having that liaison, so to speak, or that representation on the foundation board as a member of the town, there's always coordination, consistency, specifically, because the foundation exists solely for the purpose of supporting town initiatives. Yeah. So we'll go ahead and circulate those bylaws, and then if you have any, questions or comments about this, just, please contact me. Cam will do a review.
I personally think it's a great idea.
Yeah, and this is not anything that's uncommon. We've done, I mean, Steve has done a lot of research in some other organizations throughout the country that have used it for parks and outdoor recreation. It's no different than, say, a lot of the colleges have foundations to fundraise for, capital campaigns and those. It's very, very similar arrangement to that. Just that this is a very high profile, impactful project in the community, and that's kind of why it got started. Not to say that, that's not the only project that it's gonna help, in the future. This organization, will have a long life, but it was an easy decision to start it. Like, this is a perfect, first project for the foundation to take part in. And it will be continuous because there will always be opportunities for people to donate, on the Giving Tree or other through the bleachers. We're in talks right now that the bleachers will be donated through that foundation as well. So those will help offset some of the costs that the town has, because those will be funds that the town won't have to pay if they're purchased by a donor, so.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Any other questions, council, for Jimmy or Steve?
We will bring this back at the next work session, so after Cam has a review, and then if there's any comments or feedback that any of you guys have, feel free to let me know. I do have a couple things I wanted to bring up, Derek, or Mayor, before we go on to the next section of the agenda. A couple housekeeping issues. Number one, we have, just a reminder, we have a public information meeting at 5 o'clock from 5 to 7 downstairs in the Arthur Campbell Room today on the outdoor recreation, outdoor refreshment area. This is just an opportunity for people to gather information about the proposed plan and fill out comment forms, talk to town officials. We'll be down there, and we'll leave the comment period open for a couple weeks. We're probably gonna enhance the survey that we put on the website. We might turn it into a more interactive process, but right now we just have a comment form so people could download it or come to the meeting and pick one up. So that will be from 5 to 7 today. Chief will be there, Tanya will be there. Next, conflict of interest. Kim wanted me to remind everybody that per statute that we do have conflict of interest training that has to be completed every 2 years. There is some information that she's going to be sending out to everybody via email. It is something that you can do on your own. There's, I think, just a link that you can click on that's from the state of Virginia, Commonwealth of Virginia, and then you just have to go through and do the training, and it can be done independently. But that is a statutory requirement that we do that every 2 years. So she'll be sending some information out to everybody about that, so just keep an eye out for that. Lastly, I'm going to be talking with Stephanie Davis. A couple years ago, we started the process of doing a capital improvement plan, and then we sort of put it on hold right when COVID hit. It was just completely shelved. The information in there, a lot of it is still relevant. We're going to revisit that and try to, we've got several council members, 3 of you, that haven't been through that. So I'm going to talk to Stephanie about when we could potentially schedule our meeting to do that. I know last time I think we did it late in the year in 2019. It might have been November or December. Probably was November potentially. But so we are getting a little bit later start this year. But I think because we did all that work 2 years ago, our framework is there. So it's not like we have to reinvent the wheel. A lot of these projects have just been pushed back and they've been deferred. So those will be a lot of the projects that we put back in the 5-year plan, or that we'll maintain in the 5-year plan. So I'll be doing that, and then I'll be getting with everybody about some possible dates where we could do that. And then speaking of Stephanie, she's going to be coming to the next council meeting and presenting information on the compensation study that was done. We've been working on that for the last several months. There's been a lot of data that's been gathered, and we've been working on comparables with other communities, and also looking at markets, the market, and looking at internal comparables amongst other positions. So she's going to make a presentation at the next meeting, something that we have been talking about for several years. We were going to get it started before COVID hit, and then we kind of put it on hold, and we started it earlier this summer, and so now we're ready to make a presentation to the council on that. So some of you might not even be aware that we were doing that. So I don't know if Mike or Scabo or some of the others that it had been talked about before you guys came on council, and it's finally getting formalized, so. So, any questions? Anybody has any questions for me, or? Okay,
I don't think so.
all right,
Thanks, Jim.
appreciate it, yeah.
All right, that brings us to council member reports. Do any council members have reports they'd like to share with the audience or the community, or?
Well, I'd like to make a recommendation, or to consider this. We used to have our work session downstairs. It was just more informal, and I felt like more productive, and it was more discussion. And I'd like for us to consider maybe moving this work session back downstairs,
In the Arthur Campbell room?
Arthur Campbell Room.
Okay, okay. Yeah, when Donna and I first came on council, 4 years ago almost, believe it or not,
Yeah.
they were very informal sessions, and
Mhm.
we didn't really take action in those sessions. It wasn't really considered a formal meeting. So I assume that's kind of what you're alluding to, is that you'd rather have one meeting that's
Yeah.
mostly just info and
Just
not
back and
really
forth.
taking
Yeah,
action
that's
of any
right.
kind.
Mhm.
Okay. I think we can probably do that.
Yeah,
if the
yeah, if
council
that's what the council wants to
that.
do, we can make those arrangements, yep.
So we can,
It's fine with me.
Historic Preservation Review Board is currently doing that. We meet twice a month, and Diana was there yesterday, and it's meet down there, and it's very informal. People from the public come in and they sit shoulder to shoulder with us, and we have open discussions about our preservation plan that we're working on, which will be part of it will be presented to us at the next council meeting, or an update, I should say. But it encourages open discussion. And I don't know if that was productive for you yesterday or not, you know.
good, yeah, I think it's a great idea. You know, anything we can do to be more transparent and get people more motivated to come out and rub elbows with us, I think we should do.
It seemed like it also included staff more also.
Yeah, I do believe that it was more beneficial, I think,
Yeah.
on some of these issues. Right now, I mean, it's very formal, and that's fine, you know, you come up to the podium, and you know, I think for regular meetings, that makes sense. It becomes a little more conversational, so if there's topics that we need to get involved with discussions with staff, it's not, you know, one person comes up to the podium and then they sit down, or it's kind of hard to have two people stand at the podium, so it's been, it'll be easier in that sense if we do it that way, particularly for things like budget work sessions and those types of meetings. Just as long as, you know, the council, it just maintains that decorum about, hey, you know, this is our business, you know, we are discussing town business, and sometimes the only caveat I would say to going to that more informal environment is that people in the audience feel like they need to become part of the conversation, and still that, you know, there still needs to be, you know, I think structure and decorum for that, but there'll still be public comments, just like we did that before, so. But yeah, I think it would be a good idea to do that.
If that's all right with the council, that will be the plan, Kim, for advertisement of the next work session. Will truly be an informal work session. Thank you. All right, excellent. Anything else?
Does dress code change then, or does that still?
No, you still have to dress up. The rest of y'all.
This is
can
dress
down
dress
if you want. Teasing. All right. Any other council member reports or anything anybody would like to reach out? If there's none of that, I don't think we have a closed session today, so we are actually at the end of the meeting, and we are adjourned.
Awesome.
But,
Thank you. Hey, Ken.